I'm 34 years old, and I just discovered my wife of 6 years drained our $87,000 house savings account to pay for her sister's dream wedding without telling me. She handed me vendor invoices expecting me to get a loan to replace the money like it was no big deal. Before we start, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you're new, make sure to like and subscribe to become part of the Tales Teller family. Your support keeps these amazing stories coming. We'd been saving for this house for 4 years. Every bonus I got went into that account. Every tax refund. Every bit of overtime pay. We ate cheap meals and skipped vacations and drove old cars because we had a goal. A house in the suburbs with a yard for the kids we were planning to have. My wife Sarah worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, making decent money, and I'm in commercial construction management. Combined, we were pulling in about $160,000 a year. We lived modestly in a small apartment and funneled everything extra into savings. The account was joint, but we had an agreement. Any withdrawal over $500 required discussion. Any major financial decision was made together. That was the rule from day one of our marriage. We were a team. Sarah's younger sister Emma got engaged 14 months ago to some guy she'd been dating for barely a year. He worked in his dad's car dealership. She was a part-time yoga instructor. Neither of them had any real money, but Emma had always dreamed of a fairy tale wedding. The kind you see on Instagram with crystal chandeliers and designer dresses and destination bachelor parties. Sarah started getting involved in the planning immediately. She was the maid of honor and took it seriously. Too seriously, I'd realize later. She'd spend hours on the phone with Emma talking about venues and flowers and color schemes. I didn't think much of it. Sisters being close. Helping with wedding planning, totally normal stuff. Then about 8 months ago, Sarah mentioned Emma was stressed about wedding costs. Her fiancé's parents had offered $10,000, but that was nowhere near enough for what Emma wanted. Their parents, Sarah's and Emma's, were retired and living on fixed income. They could maybe contribute $5,000 total. Emma wanted a $60,000 wedding minimum. I said that's insane. Get married at City Hall and throw a nice party for $10,000. Live within your means. Sarah got defensive and said not everyone wants a courthouse wedding. Emma deserved her special day. She'd only get married once, hopefully. I said hopefully is doing a lot of work in that sentence given they barely know each other, but whatever. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Let them figure it out. What happened next would completely shatter everything I thought I knew about my wife and her priorities. Sarah started acting strange about 6 months ago. Secretive with her phone. Vague about where money was going. We'd always been transparent about finances, but suddenly she was defensive when I asked about charges on our credit card. Little things. A $200 charge here, $350 there. She'd say it was work expenses she'd get reimbursed for or gifts for family or just stuff we needed. I trusted her so I didn't push it. We were still contributing to savings. I checked the account every month and the balance kept growing. Everything seemed fine. The wedding was scheduled for last month. Destination wedding in Napa Valley because of course it was. Sarah flew out 4 days early to help with final preparations. I couldn't get the time off work, so I was flying in the day before. She seemed stressed before leaving, but I figured that was normal maid of honor stuff. The wedding itself was absolutely over the top. Vineyard ceremony at sunset. Reception in a renovated barn that probably cost more per hour than our monthly rent. Premium open bar, live band, elaborate floral installations everywhere, and a dress that looked like it cost more than a used car. I kept thinking, how are they paying for this? But figured maybe the fiancé's parents had kicked in more money or they'd gotten some kind of deal or gone into debt, which seemed stupid, but their choice. The wedding was beautiful, I'll give them that. Emma looked happy. Sarah looked proud. I got drunk on expensive wine I didn't pay for and danced with my wife and flew home the next day thinking that was that. Then 3 days ago, Sarah sat me down after dinner with a serious face and a stack of papers. She slid them across the table. Invoices, receipts, payment confirmations, all from wedding vendors. Venue, catering, florals, photography, band, dress, hair and makeup, decorations, invitations, favors, the works. Total at the bottom was $86,400. My name was on some of the payment confirmations. Well, my name as in joint account holder. Every single invoice had been paid from our house savings account over the past 7 months in carefully spaced transactions, so nothing looked too suspicious if I glanced at the account. I stared at the papers feeling like I was having a stroke. "What is this?" I asked. Sarah took a deep breath and said Emma needed help with the wedding, and I helped her, and before you get mad, just hear me out. We can replace the money easily. You're up for a promotion soon, and I'm getting a bonus next quarter, and we can take out a home equity line of credit on the house we're going to buy to cover it in the meantime. I just looked at her. We don't have a house to get equity from, I said slowly. Right, but when we buy one we can. She said like that made any sense at all. Sarah, you spent our entire house fund on your sister's wedding. She nodded. Without telling me. Without asking. We had an agreement about withdrawals over $500. This was $86,000. I know, but you would have said no, she said. Of course I would have said no. It's our money for our house for our future, not for Emma's princess fantasy day. She got defensive immediately. It's not a fantasy. It was her wedding, the most important day of her life. More important than our plans, more important than the house we've been saving for 4 years, more important than our agreement to make financial decisions together. She said I was being selfish. That family helps family. That Emma would have been devastated if she couldn't have the wedding she dreamed about since she was a little girl. I asked if Emma even knew where the money came from. Sarah hesitated and said not exactly. She thinks Mom and Dad took out a loan and we helped a little. So you lied to her too. I didn't lie, I just didn't give her all the details because I didn't want her to feel guilty. She should feel guilty. She should feel terrible actually because this was theft, Sarah. You stole from our joint account. You won't believe what she said next and how she tried to justify destroying 4 years of sacrifice. Sarah's face twisted into something ugly. It's not theft when it's a joint account. Both our names are on it. I have every right to use that money. For us, I said, for our shared goals, not to fund your sister's champagne dreams on a beer budget. She said we'd just rebuild the savings. It would take maybe 2 years if we buckled down. 2 years. Sarah, we already waited 4 years. We were going to start house hunting next month. We had appointments with realtors scheduled. She waved that away like it was nothing. So we postpone. Houses aren't going anywhere. Interest rates are going up. Prices are going up. We had a plan. Plans change, she said. Family needed help and I helped them. Without my consent, without discussion, you unilaterally decided to give away 4 years of our combined sacrifice. She started crying. Why are you being so cold about this? Emma is my sister. She's family. I couldn't let her have some sad little budget wedding when I had the means to help. We had the means, and those means were earmarked for our future. She said our future wasn't going anywhere, but Emma only gets married once. I said given the foundation of financial irresponsibility they're building on, I wouldn't bet on that, but regardless, not our problem. She called me heartless. Said I'd never understood how close she and Emma were. Said if the situation was reversed and my brother needed help, I'd do the same thing. I said if my brother needed $86,000, I'd tell him to figure it out like an adult, because I'm not lighting my future on fire to fund someone else's party. She said it wasn't just a party, it was a wedding, a sacred celebration of love. A sacred celebration that cost more than most people make in a year. Get real, Sarah. We went back and forth for an hour. She cried. I stayed calm, which seemed to make her angrier. Eventually, she said she'd expected me to be upset, but thought I'd understand once I calmed down, that I'd see she did it out of love. I told her love doesn't justify financial betrayal. She flinched at the word betrayal, but I meant it. She betrayed my trust, violated our agreement, and made a massive financial decision that affected both of us without any discussion. That night I slept in the guest room. Couldn't stand to be near her. The next morning I called my bank and separated our accounts. Opened a new individual savings account and a new checking account. Changed my direct deposit. She had access to nothing of mine anymore. When she found out, she lost it. Accused me of being controlling and financially abusive. I said no, financial abuse is what you did, draining shared savings without consent. What I'm doing is protecting myself from further damage. I also called a divorce attorney just to understand my options. Not saying I was definitely divorcing her, but I needed to know where I stood. The attorney said because the money was in a joint account, it would be hard to prove theft in a criminal sense. But in a divorce, it would absolutely be considered dissipation of marital assets, and I'd likely be entitled to compensation. She also said I should document everything, all the invoices, all communication, everything. I went home and made copies of all the wedding payment receipts Sarah had shown me. Photographed them, saved them to cloud storage, sent copies to my personal email. Sarah noticed and asked what I was doing. Protecting myself, I said. Then the consequences started rolling in, and they hit way harder than my wife ever expected. Sarah's parents called me 2 days later. Her mom was crying. She said Sarah told them what happened and that I was threatening divorce over her helping family. I corrected the record. I'm not threatening anything. I'm considering my options after my wife stole $86,000 from our joint savings without telling me and expects me to just accept it and take out loans to replace it. There was silence on the other end. Her dad got on and said he didn't raise Sarah to be deceptive, but family helps family, and maybe I was overreacting. I asked if he'd be okay with his wife draining their retirement account without telling him to pay for something. More silence. That's different, he finally said. How, I asked. It's just different. I told them I loved Sarah, but what she did was a fundamental violation of trust, and our marriage might not survive it. Her mom started crying harder. Emma called me that night. She'd apparently just found out where the money really came from. She was hysterical. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know Sarah used your house money. She told me she and you had talked about it and agreed to help and that it was fine. I never would have accepted if I'd known. I asked if she could pay any of it back. She said no. She and her new husband were broke. The honeymoon alone put them $8,000 in debt on credit cards. They had nothing. So my $86,000 is just gone, I said. She started crying and said she was so sorry. She'd talk to Sarah. They'd figure something out. There's nothing to figure out, Emma. The money's spent, your wedding's over, and my marriage is probably over too. She begged me not to divorce Sarah. Said Sarah did it out of love for her, that Sarah had always taken care of her growing up, that this was just Sarah being protective. I said Sarah can be protective with her own money, not ours. Emma said she'd try to pay me back somehow over time. I told her not to bother. I didn't want payments stretched over 20 years. I just wanted her to understand the consequences of accepting money you can't afford to spend. My brother found out through family gossip and called me. He was furious on my behalf. Dude, you have to divorce her. She stole from you. That's insane. You can't trust someone who'd do that. I said I didn't know yet what I was going to do. He said if his wife ever pulled something like that, he'd be gone immediately, no second thoughts. But it's easy to say that when you're not the one living it. Sarah started love bombing me. Apology notes left around the house. My favorite meals cooked for dinner. Promises that she'd make it right, that we'd rebuild the savings together faster than before, that she'd take on extra work, that she'd do anything. I asked if anything included a postnuptial agreement specifying separate finances going forward. She looked horrified. You want a postnup? If we stay married, yes, I want legal protection against this ever happening again. She said that was insulting, that it meant I didn't trust her. You're right, I said. I don't trust you. You proved you're not trustworthy. So if we're staying together, we're doing it with legal safeguards. She cried and said she couldn't believe I'd require that. Then I guess you've made your choice, I said, and walked away. Her friends started reaching out. A whole parade of people telling me I was being too harsh, that Sarah made a mistake, but she loved me, that marriages go through rough patches, that I shouldn't throw away 6 years over money. I corrected every single one of them. It's not about the money, it's about trust and respect and partnership, all of which she destroyed. And it's $86,000, not pocket change. That's life-changing amounts of money that we saved through genuine sacrifice. One friend said money can be replaced, but relationships can't. I said relationships built on lies and financial betrayal aren't worth keeping. Sarah's sister Emma sent me a long email. She said she was returning gifts from the wedding to try to get money to pay me back. I told her to stop. Returning gifts was humiliating and wouldn't put a dent in what was spent. She said she felt horrible and responsible. I said she was partially responsible for accepting money without verifying the source, but the bulk of responsibility lay with Sarah, who lied to everyone involved. Emma said Sarah was devastated and barely eating and crying all the time. I said that's what happens when your actions have consequences. But here's where it got even messier and multiple lives started falling apart because of one selfish decision. Emma's new marriage started crumbling almost immediately. Turns out her husband thought her family had paid for the wedding, and when he found out it was actually his new brother-in-law's stolen house fund, he freaked out. He felt guilty and embarrassed and said he never would have agreed to such an expensive wedding if he'd known the real situation. They started fighting constantly about money and honesty and family boundaries. 2 months after the wedding, Emma called me crying, saying they were separated. He'd moved back in with his parents. She blamed Sarah for lying about the money source and causing this mess. Sarah blamed me for not just going along with it and keeping quiet. I blamed Sarah for the entire situation because it was entirely her fault. Sarah got fired from her job. Apparently, she'd been using company resources to plan Emma's wedding, company time on personal calls, company credit card for some deposits she'd planned to pay back before reconciliation. Her employer found out during a routine audit and terminated her immediately. Now she had no income right when we needed money most. She applied for unemployment and started job hunting, but with a termination on her record, it was slow going. Without her income, we couldn't afford our apartment. I could cover it alone technically, but I didn't want to. I told Sarah she needed to move out. I'd take over the lease solo. She could go stay with her parents or Emma or figure it out, but we needed space. She refused to leave. Said it was her apartment too, her name on the lease. I said fine, then I'll leave. I found a studio across town, gave notice at our old place, moved out. Sarah had to scramble to either take over the lease herself or find a roommate or move. She ended up moving back in with her parents at 32 years old. Her parents were not happy about it. Her dad apparently gave her a harsh lecture about responsibility and marriage and poor choices. Her mom was more sympathetic but still disappointed. The family dynamics were fracturing. Emma and Sarah weren't speaking because Emma blamed Sarah for her marriage falling apart. Their parents were caught in the middle. Holiday gatherings were apparently tense and awful. I heard all this through mutual friends because Sarah and I were barely communicating except through attorneys at this point. I filed for divorce 3 months after finding out about the money. Sarah contested it, wanted marriage counseling, wanted another chance. I agreed to 3 counseling sessions just to say I tried. The counselor was actually pretty fair. Asked Sarah why she'd done it. Sarah said she felt obligated to help her sister, that she'd always been the responsible one who took care of Emma, that she didn't think I'd understand. The counselor pointed out that by not communicating, she'd guaranteed I wouldn't understand and had violated the fundamental trust of the marriage. Sarah cried through all 3 sessions. By the 3rd session, the counselor said, in her professional opinion, we had irreconcilable differences stemming from a massive breach of trust and incompatible views on financial boundaries and family obligations. She didn't recommend continuing counseling because Sarah showed no real insight into why what she did was wrong beyond it made you mad. Sarah still thought she'd done a good thing in a bad way. I filed the final divorce papers the next week. The divorce took 8 months to finalize because Sarah fought me on asset division. She wanted half of everything, including the money she'd spent on the wedding, counted as a joint marital expense. My attorney laughed at that argument. The judge agreed with us. Ruled that the $86,000 was dissipation of marital assets that Sarah had essentially stolen from the marriage, and that I was entitled to be compensated. Since the money was gone, the judge awarded me a larger share of our other assets, the cars, the retirement accounts, the furniture, everything. Sarah walked away from our 6-year marriage with almost nothing. She had to file for bankruptcy a year later because she couldn't manage her debts without my income. Her credit was destroyed. She's working retail now, living with her parents still, driving a 15-year-old car. Emma's marriage did end in divorce, finalized about 6 months ago. Her ex-husband wanted an annulment claiming fraud, but couldn't prove it, so they just did a standard divorce. Emma's bitter and struggling financially and blames everyone but herself. The sisters are talking again now, united in their belief that I'm the villain who couldn't forgive a simple mistake. Sarah tried to reach out a few months ago, sent me a letter saying she'd been in therapy and realized she had codependent issues with Emma and poor financial boundaries, and she was working on herself. Said she hoped someday I could forgive her not for her sake, but for my own peace. I didn't respond. Forgiveness isn't something she's entitled to just because she went to therapy. Some betrayals are too fundamental to come back from. I'm 34 years old, divorced, and starting over financially, but at least I'm free from someone who valued her sister's wedding more than our future. I bought a small condo 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. 1 bedroom, updated kitchen, decent neighborhood. I got a conventional loan, put down 15% that I'd managed to save again after the divorce settlement came through. It's not the house with the yard I'd originally dreamed of, but it's a start, and it's entirely mine with no one to drain my accounts behind my back. Dating is complicated now. I'm honest with people early on about what happened, and it's a real litmus test. Some women think I was too harsh, that I should have worked it out. I end those dates quickly because anyone who thinks $86,000 theft is forgivable isn't someone I can build with. Others get it immediately, understand the betrayal, respect the boundary. Those are the ones worth a second date. My ex-brother-in-law, Emma's ex, reached out to me recently. We got coffee and bonded over being collateral damage in the sisters' dysfunction. He's a decent guy who got swept up in Emma's princess fantasies and paid the price. We're actually friends now, which is weird, but also kind of therapeutic. 2 guys who learned expensive lessons about women who value appearance and fantasy over reality and partnership. My family was supportive throughout. My parents, my brother, everyone said I did the right thing. My mom said she'd raised me to have standards and self-respect, and she was proud I'd enforced my boundaries even when it was hard. My dad said any woman who'd steal from her husband isn't a woman worth keeping. Sometimes late at night, I wonder if I overreacted. If I should have tried harder to forgive, to rebuild, to move past it. Then I remember the look on Sarah's face when she handed me those invoices expecting me to just accept it and fix it with a loan. The entitlement, the assumption that her priorities automatically became mine, the complete disregard for my feelings or our plans. And I know I made the right choice. Some people think love means infinite forgiveness. I think love means mutual respect, and when respect is gone, love isn't enough. Sarah's life fell apart, and I can't even feel bad about it because she did it to herself. She made choices, deliberate choices over 7 months to systematically drain our savings. Every transaction was a choice to prioritize her sister over me. Every lie was a choice to protect herself over being honest. Every day she didn't tell me was a choice to dig deeper into betrayal. Those were her choices, and now she lives with the consequences. Emma's paying consequences too. A failed marriage, financial struggle, fractured family relationships, and the knowledge that her dream wedding cost multiple people their futures. The money is gone. The marriage is gone. The life I'd planned is gone. But I'm okay, and that's what matters most in the end. I make good money. I've got the condo. I've got my freedom. And I've got the self-respect that comes from enforcing boundaries even when everyone around you says you're wrong. Would I have preferred none of this happened? That Sarah had been the partner I thought she was? That we'd bought our house and started our family and lived happily ever after? Obviously. But that wasn't reality. Reality was a woman who'd lie and steal and manipulate and then expect forgiveness because family. I don't know where Sarah is now beyond the basics I hear through mutual connections. Don't really care either. She's not my problem anymore. Emma neither. They're 2 grown women who made terrible choices and now live with them. Me? I'm building something new. Something honest. Something where my partner, when I find the right one, will actually be a partner who respects me enough to have hard conversations instead of going behind my back. The bar is low, but apparently it needs to be stated clearly. Don't steal from your spouse. Don't lie about major financial decisions. Don't prioritize other people over your marriage without discussion. Basic stuff that Sarah couldn't manage. So yeah, I'm divorced at 34, starting over, but starting over honest and free is better than staying in a lie. Every single time.